Hey guys, Chappelle Victor from Cult Classics, and you're about to watch The Bold Voice of Contemporary Horror. This is an awesome panel that happens every year at San Diego Comicon the last 2 years. It's been moderated by Michael Lerman from the Overlook Film Festival. This year features David Dastmalchian, Akela Cooper, the writer of Megan, the producer of In a Violent Nature is on here, as well as Angel from Fangoria. It's an awesome panel. You're only seeing this note because during this panel, some footage was shown from Cuckoo and The Substance, and due to rights issues, we had to cut that out. That panel also kind of ended abruptly since it started late because the panel before it took a minute getting out. So when you see kind of like the cut right at the end, that's because the panel had to be like shut down so the next one could start. In any sense, check out this panel. Great every year, great conversation. And thank you guys for checking out Cult Classics. Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoy the video. And now check out The Bold Voice of Contemporary Horror from San Diego Comic-Con 2024. Thanks, guys.
And welcome to The Bold Voice of Contemporary Horror. I'd like to bring up some friends we have here today. First, Angel Melanson from Fangoria. I'd also like to bring up Peter Kuplowsky, who produced In a Violent Nature. He's also the mind behind it. Responsible for a little franchise you might know as Megan, Akela Cooper. And another horror connoisseur who you saw in this clip and who's been in so many incredible projects, including Late Night with the Devil this year, David Dastmalchian.
Good 12 months.
Yeah. So I just want to start easy and just go down the line. I'd love for you each to talk about, given this video, your favorite horror film from the past 12 months. Angel, you want to start?
I'm going to go with, it's very, very tough, but The First Omen blew me away. That's not what I was expecting, and I can't believe that was Arkansas Stevenson's first movie, like first feature film, instantly.
I gotta say, Oddity really impressed me. Damien McCarthy, I think, is one of the greatest scare engineers in contemporary horror, and I was so impressed with Caveat. I was very excited about Oddity, and there were a couple clips of that that just came out, and it's really, really terrific.
I'm going to say Late Night with the Devil.
When did Where Evil Lurks drop? That was not within the last year.
Oh, it was.
It was
Yeah,
within the last year.
You just found my flaw in my reel. Incredible film, by the way. If you haven't seen When Evil Lurks, please go see it.
That's funny. Exhumed.
Yeah.
That was pretty recently too.
Exhumed?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was in the reel.
Exhumed.
Yeah, Exhumed was pretty great.
Okay, those are my two things.
Well, I wanted to kind of get into where we are and how we got here, what is making us all excited about what's happening. So maybe I'll start with Akela in terms of just what projects you're drawn to, what you're interested in writing these days, what do you think is working, what's popping, what's getting sold?
What I'm drawn to is originality in horror, and I feel like that's kind of making a comeback, at least on the stuff that has been brought to me that I've been excited about, and stuff that I'm actually like out pitching that I can't really talk about. So, studios and indies taking chances on original ideas is really exciting to get like new blood into the horror genre. Like I've really enjoyed the success of the Terrifier series. It's like you finally have like another new iconic horror character that people can cosplay and they love, Art the Clown, so that's been really exciting. And just also, as someone who was told multiple times through like before Malignant that like no one was buying horror movies that had gore in them. Like really, really happy that that's also like getting a chance to come back to the screen and, you know, fun horror.
Yeah. I think fun is a key word that I've seen all of you share in what you've written about and what you're interested in. But I'm curious, David, what draws you to a script now in terms of horror?
Here's where I'm at, like right now in the journey, because it changes, right? I mean, I'm an old man now, and I've been doing this thing for a minute, and it keeps evolving, and I keep learning, and I keep growing. I hope so. I hope I do until I'm, you know, bones. But I think that at the moment, the thing that intrigues and fascinates me the most is probably the boring answer. Maybe it's not boring, but it's the very heady answer of I have so many perplexing questions about this life at this moment. I thought at 49 I would have really figured stuff out. I really thought I would understand why I get so depressed, why I get so anxious over little weird things. Why is it so hard sometimes to wake up in the morning? Why am I so afraid of the things that I'm afraid of? And I think that through the lens of this genre, which is unfortunately, it's not that it can't be fun, because you're right, fun can happen and you can still wrestle with and explore those questions. Right now, I'm just at this place where I'm staring at the universe around me being like, God, this doesn't get easier. And then when you go through a story where you have, you know, an incredible new iconic, you know, monster or entity or event, whatever it may be, nature horror, serial killer horror, supernatural horror, slasher, gore fest. To me, that's the thing that when someone like sends me a project, or we're starting to develop an idea with the company that I am running right now, or I'm trying to create something, that's the thing that hooks me, gets me going. It gets me really revved up about the thought of jumping in on something and giving that energy to it.
Yeah. I'm curious, Peter, can you relate to that a little bit? Because, you know, you have this kind of dual role as a programmer, as a producer, and have found so many interesting filmmakers in both roles, and working with some.
I mean, producing was an accident. It was very much an extension of my work as a curator for film festivals, starting with Toronto After Dark and then the Toronto International Film Festival. I worked with Fantastic Fest for 10 years. And yeah, I mean, really, I'm always attracted to interesting decisions. I think the thing about horror fans, and as being one myself, we just watch a lot of it. We're watching it all the time. We understand this genre so intrinsically, and we love everything about the formula of the genre and the tropes and the iconography. But what delights us are the new variables, and that's what's so great about horror films. It's like, what is the new variable? And it's not just checking boxes. I always like to say it's about the boxes we didn't even know were there. And that's what I look for as a curator. And as it happened, I would befriend and with filmmakers, especially short filmmakers, and I would ask, hey, when's the next movie? When, you know, I'd love to see more from you. And they would say, I don't know what I'm doing. And I said, I don't know either, but I know some people who've made movies, so let's try to connect people together. And then over, you know, the first filmmaker that I established that relationship with, Stephen Kostansky, and he would just describe these movies to me, and I would say, I just want to see that. So my producing is kind of like pre-programmed. I just want to see these movies exist.
Yeah.
So I just like, how do I make them exist so they can then play festivals and meet horror audiences?
For those of you who don't know, Peter and Stephen Kostansky made a movie called
Psycho Doorman, yeah. And that was just, you know, I mean, Steve's a filmmaker who, he literally just imagined the toy commercial, and he was describing his toy commercial, and reverse engineered the toy commercial into a film. But so, yeah, so much of it is simply, what resonated, David, what you said just about like the burning questions we have about like, why do I feel the way I do? Why am I scared about things that scare me? And everyone has, you know, to be scared is very subjective too. And that's what I look for in projects as well, where I feel like, is this an exploration of fear or exploration of these emotions that I feel I haven't encountered before? Or is coming from a unique perspective, and that perspective can be from the individual voice, it can be from the part of the world it's coming from. I've been so excited to see so many other national cinemas embrace genre to tell the world about their cultural perspective. There was a really terrific film last year called Naga, which you can see on Netflix, and it's a Saudi film about a woman who's being terrorized by a camel in the desert. And it's terrifying, it's like a camel creature feature. But you also get to see so much about Saudi life in a way that's not didactic. It's not, it doesn't feel like it is condescending or voyeuristic or colonialist in its vision. It's just telling a horror story, but through using that as a conduit to explore culture. And so I think that's really exciting.
Yeah. I was wondering, Angel, can you speak to a little bit the trends you're seeing in terms of as you watch as much as you do and write about as much as you do, kind of what direction you feel like we're going in?
You already touched upon it a little bit, and this is literally like the perfect example of where the trend is going. For a little bit, we were in this like mode of like very, very serious trauma-based horror, which is great, and I'm a fan of some of that stuff.
That's
Yeah,
Babadook.
lots of Babadook.
Yeah,
But
Hereditary.
yes, everything was like rooted in that. I tend to just personally gravitate towards really fun bonkers shit, and then that's what you guys came in the picture were like, poof, kicked open the door, and you're like, there's a guy on the back of my head, you know? And stuff like that, but in the mainstream, because like stuff like that, like we're all fans of weird bonkers stuff. Something like Malignant, I'm like, my parents went to buy a ticket to that movie and didn't know what the hell to expect, and then it's that, and then like, you know, all of this stuff that you guys are doing is just veering back towards bonkers stuff. I think we're all fans of like 70s and 80s genre stuff, and that's kind of showing in the work. And I'm just super excited that we're just getting gory and disgusting and having fun with it.
Yeah. You know, when you speak about that, when you talk about 70s and 80s stuff, and David mentioned his age, and I believe he's very, very young, but I'm curious kind of, for all of you, what you grew up watching and then how that kind of informs the way you see it now and how it's changed and where you think it should go and how you wanted to contribute to it. I know that's 4 questions, but I'm trying to make it a little open-ended, but anybody can jump in and talk a little bit about, I want to talk about horror history as it relates to you and where it came to now.
Origins are so important, and it's not to say that your trajectory as a storyteller can't be completely altered by maybe a life event or the discovery of some filmmaker, some body of work that you never knew about that you could find when you're 50, and it could change the entire way you view story. But for me, being raised in the Bible Belt in a very fear-based, you know, dogmatic religious kind of environment where concepts of the darkness and the afterlife were just riddled with conflicting and contrasting ideologies that really kind of just messed me up as a kid. There was something about creeping downstairs and watching the creature feature with the incredible horror hostess we had in Kansas City who introduced me to, you know, the first, I think, full feature I saw was Olive Reed and Curse the Werewolf, classic Hammer, Universal, all the RKO stuff. Anything in that space, it cracked something open for me, and then and that led me on a path that was shaped pretty early on by, you know, media like Fangoria magazine and like the movies that I watched, and then the local video shop where everything from Wizard of Gore to, you know, classic cinema like TCM really shaped who I became as a storyteller.
I'll admit I don't remember all of the question, but I'll do my best.
Other things you got.
Yeah, your horror origin story and how it relates
It's a
to
good
now.
story.
I honestly think I was born into horror because my parents watched everything with us. Like I do not have that, I was X amount of age when I saw my first R-rated horror film. My parents were watching R-rated horror films with us all the damn time. So like I watched John Carpenter's The Thing with my dad, and like like at some point I became aware enough to go, it's like, he put on the movie with the dog. Okay, so at a certain point I'm gonna have to get behind the couch for certain scenes because I know I'm gonna like have nightmares when I go to sleep. But my parents took us to see Aliens in theaters. I was sitting on my mom's lap. I saw Predator in theaters. I saw The Hidden in theaters. You know, like those were the experiences that they wanted to. share with us. And so my origin story, I guess, was like from birth.
I hid behind the couch too, but it was like during sitcoms where there's like a moral conundrum, and I'd be like, I can't watch anymore. Why did he lock them?
The Office is Peter's nightmare.
Yeah, no,
Came from the store.
no, don't do that. So I didn't actually watch horror films. I was terrified of them. I couldn't watch them, but I was fascinated by them all the same. Halloween was my favorite time of year, but I was just really too intimidated by horror movies. What I did is I often read about them. I remember cutting out articles about horror films when Blair Witch Project came out. I never saw the film when it came out. It was too scary to go see it. But I watched the documentary about the film. I had the Time magazine article of the film. I had the website to go on, but I was like, I'm not gonna watch that film. Watch those poor people die. That's too scary. It's too scary. And I grew up in Canada though, and I have to say, as a shout out, the Canadian television industry, specifically the Canadian children's television industry, definitely was a very traumatic industry. It was responsible for a lot of nightmares. Some of you may, obviously, Are You Afraid of the Dark? It came out of the Canadian film industry. Goosebumps was shot there largely because of Are You Afraid of the Dark? There was a specific TV show called The Odyssey that was all about a kid who fell into a coma. And the show, it's one of the most disturbing children's shows. It's like the Twin Peaks of children's TV. But a kid is in a coma for the entire series, and the show, and in this coma world, no one is above 15. They all worship a 16-year-old named Brad. And Brad looks like the main character's dad when he was 16. And the whole show is like a quest to find Brad. But I remember there was this guy with ice face, and he was called the Iceman. And he was so scary. And so these are the things that kind of inspired me, I guess, were allowed me to wade into horror. And I don't think it was really until high school, and I think I went with some friends to go see Blade 2. And I remember that was like my gore moment where I became obsessed with gore after watching that movie.
It was kind of just something that was always ever present. I was not allowed to watch rated R horror movies, so I grew up I had the opposite experience of Akela. My parents were like, no rated R, but my dad was a horror fan, so I grew up on all the Universal monsters, obviously Hitchcock, Twilight Zone, all that kind of stuff. And also just the 80s were a very wonderful time for like gateway horror. Like that shit is dark. Like Disney cartoons are very, very dark. The villains are always this really cool kind of characters that they present. And then I have a lot of my childhood is owed to Canadian television. Like I think you said, like Erie, Indiana was another one.
Yeah.
So
That last sequence in Fantasia, Ball Mountain, that was awesome.
yes. So it's like all this horror was kind of being fed to us, and it was kind of like, okay, we're kind of testing the waters if you can take this, and then you just kind of like wanted more, and you got kind of the bug for it. And then when I was a teenager, I told my mom I was going to go see Beverly Hills Ninja, which I still have never seen to this day. But I went to see Scream instead. And
I want to ask you guys about where we should be going, what you're interested in going to. But you mentioned a couple things that were very kind of Baroque children's horror, things like Fantasia, things like Erie, Indiana. And I think it's a perfect setup for our first clip from an upcoming horror movie, and we can talk about where we're going. So I'm going to show you guys a clip from a film called Cuckoo. So that's coming later this summer from Neon. You can keep an eye out for it. But I was curious, and obviously a new kind of monster movie in a lot of ways.
And the devil's in the details. I think that sequence is a great one that you showed with the shadow on the road, because I feel like it's just such a simple moment, but that's the kind of stuff that I feel like sells a screenplay too.
Yeah.
Like someone reads that and goes, they can just imagine that moment. It's such a visceral, it's such a simple gesture, but it's probably one of the things that helped me.
I was curious what you feel like we're not seeing yet from each of you. You know, like, is there a thing that you hope to see, or in your creativity, in your mind, there is something that you want out there in the world that just hasn't come yet?
Horror with people of color that does not revolve around racism or trauma of any kind.
I mean, how malleable and dexterous the horror genre is. I mean, a few years ago, I would have never believed that like we'd be in this like slow cinema way with films like Skinamarink and even what Chris Nash did with In a Violent Nature. So I just hope that there are going to be more opportunities for that level of experimentation. I think something that I'm seeing a lot more of, and where there's a lot of interest is in like war-based storytelling, in which the story really does exist. And we saw that with Longlegs, where the lore is existing outside the frame of the film itself. I think that's a trend we're going to see a lot more of, and I really like it. I think there's a huge audience for it, and it allows for a different entryway that's not just the movie itself into having conversations about horror.
Yeah.
I want to hear what Angel has to say.
I was like trying to peek over. I was like, "Are you good?"
It's a very polite panel.
No, you go. No, you go. I have very impatiently been awaiting a new wave of body horror and monster movies, and now I finally feel like I'm getting my wish. It's happening.
It's coming.
It manifested this. It's time. The cycle has come back around, and it's time for like the stuff that I really, really champion and enjoy. And also to piggyback on that, like I love to see just diverse characters, like queer characters of color, and it has nothing to do with the story. They just happen to be there because they just exist in normal spaces. And I would like to see a little more of that. I feel like we're slowly getting there, but we need more of that.
Yeah, because I feel like, you know, when Jordan Peele's Get Out came, it was great, but also I think Hollywood kind of learned the wrong lesson, which was like, oh, we all have to make these like Get Out style movies that have to be movies about, that are very much with that discourse at top of mind. And sometimes that, yeah.
It was like every time I would go out to pitch something that just happened to have a black lead, you know, being in a horror movie,
Yeah.
you know, the execs would politely listen to my pitch, and then they would go, but what is this saying? You know, and I would be like, if this situation fucking sucks and it's terrifying. They're like, no, on a deeper level, what is it saying? And they would just be like them staring at me staring at them, and I'm like, I'm gonna make you white executive say it. Yeah, it was always, you know, like, what is it saying about the black community? It's like, this fucking situation is terrifying. But, you know, it was push that like any horror film that I had to do, like had to say something, and I hope with, you know, what clout I have from Malignant and Megan will help me in the future get those movies off the ground now.
Right.
I guess I'm yearning to see. I love fantasy horror. I love good science fiction horror, but I'm a you know, lifelong comic collector, and I've collected, you know, horror comics for most of my life. But I do love the intersection between you know, superhero mythologies and horror, and I'd like to see that explored more. It has been done, and there's people doing it. I think that's really exciting. And I just think there's something about the way we're intersecting with technology, which you've done in a really cool way. But what I'm yearning for right now is the way we experience it. I feel like we're all about on the brink of something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's VR, if it's what. I want a new experience for my horror, and I think about this a lot. Like, what does that look and feel like? Is it, do we get William Castle on their asses and just bring in like some kind of live element to the theatrical experience? Is that possible, or is there a way legally and financially you can pull that off? I don't
Francis
know.
Ford Coppola has like a live element in Megalopolis.
I heard
I would love to see that in a horror movie.
Yes, yes.
You know?
Impercepto or John Waters style. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is. There's something, and you're out there, or one of us up here. I don't know. Someone's gonna.
There was a wave, and I don't think the technology was there for it, but there was this wave, I remember, of submissions I got a few years ago for the Toronto Film Festival, where it was like apps that you would have to download, and while you're watching the movie, the app would take over your phone and do stuff on your phone. At the end of the day, I found that like pretty disruptive and obnoxious, because you're just going to be on your phone during the movie.
Yeah, sure.
Engage with it. But I do feel like, you know, there's something maybe to that, or to making people realize that they're in a space that is this part of the movie, is this, you know, having that William Castle effect. I would love to see that come back.
We did an Impercepto screening of The Tingler at the Overlook Film Festival a few years ago. Was anybody there? Yeah! Man, if your butt got zapped. It was great. That was so awesome.
Well, 40X had a big weekend with Twister, so like we need some more 40X horror movies.
So they just need to like warn the audience and then like replace the water with blood.
You have to warn the audience. I took my family to see Dune the week of my father's funeral in Kansas. My family were all depressed and drunk, and I thought we were going to see Dune in 3D. I didn't understand really what 40X was at that time, and everybody sits in these weird chairs. These like older people who are like very like, you just don't want to, you know, they just want to, they snuck their booze, they just want to watch this movie that I'm going to appear in, and all of a sudden shit went crazy. Wow, there was wine and beer all over that place. That's the Dastmalchians.
So, speaking of interactive, we have a few things for this audience, and I'm going to start. Angel's going to get your wish because
Exactly, butts.
we. I'm just going to put up a still here for an upcoming body horror film.
I think it's the year of body horror. I just announced the Midnight Madness lineup for Toronto, and there's multiple body horror films.
Yeah. But also, we have a few things from the substance for you. So I'll invite our people to come up and start giving things out. But while we're doing that, I also want to invite you to line up for questions if you have questions of the panel. We do have also prizes for good questions, so please come on up.
You better win. Because if you don't get chosen, be careful. There's a lever we pull and you fall
And then I zap your
into a
butt.
pit. These little spikes.
All right. So I would say endings to horror movies are very quintessential and something that could, just make that lasting impact to an audience. And you have your like nihilistic endings, you have your cathartic endings for your main characters. I have, I guess, one question for you, Akela. What goes into the thought process on how to end it? And for the rest of the panel, what horror movies do you think has your favorite ending?
For me, like as a writer, and I don't know if this is just a quirk or whatever, but like I can't start a project until I know what the ending is. I have to know where I'm going in the journey, like where the stop is. So usually once I have the ending just early on, or it could be, it might take a while. But it's that perfect last image. I would say, like that image is gonna burn into the audience's mind. For me, and like usually I know when I'm like, oh okay, I wake up at 3 a.m. and like I'm thinking about that ending and stuff. It's like it's the one you want the audience to go home with and think about in the car ride, even if you can do the refrigerator, they're not taking apart the movie. That's cool.
I'll actually speak to the violent nature because that, for those of you who've seen it, has a very unusual ending, and it was an ending that was somewhat divisive because it's intentionally anticlimactic in a sense, or it's sustaining the climax in a strange way, and to give people who haven't seen it some context without spoiling things. Basically, it's an ending that pays homage to the ending of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, when Sally gets in the truck and she's saved, and it recognizes that we were just interested in, we've never quite seen the conversation that occurs after they've driven far enough away that, what are they going to talk about? Like, what is that car ride going to be like? It's probably going to be very awkward. It's probably going to be the person just trying to keep her awake so she doesn't bleed out. And then, so that's how we kind of went into that ending, but it was important for us because we really wanted to explore the notion and leave the audience with the idea that while the final girl in slasher movies, their final moment is usually positioned as something empowering, cathartic, that may well be the case, but it is also something that's deeply scarred. And this is not something that's ever going to be over for people who experience that. So that was something that Nash, for him, that was why he made it, was to get to an ending moment in which a character is looking into the woods, and you as an audience are right there with her going, is there something in those woods? And realize she will feel that for the rest of the time.
That was a great question. Like, you can go get stuff from Rachel right there. Before we move on from that answer, though, Peter, do you think there'll be a sequel?
Well, when we started In a Violent Nature, it was always conceived as kind of a meta sequel in a fictional slasher universe, where we imagined that maybe there were 3 or 4 films that came before the movie, and there was all this sort of built-in lore. But we never really set out to make more films because we just thought it was such a weird and strange experiment. We didn't know what the audience was. Oh, he didn't tell me he was going to be here. Ladies and gentlemen, Johnny, In a Violent Nature. We were certain that when we gave his necklace back, he would just go back to the fire tower from whence he came, but Johnny, have you finished your walk? Are you still going to be? Is your soul at rest, or could we expect more? I want you to put something on the screen. I'm a bit of a Johnny whisperer.
Look, all I ask is that you kill one of them first and not me.
Yeah, we can confirm that. Yeah, In a Violent Nature. Excited. We're all really excited too because we really didn't expect this to happen. We've had such great relationship with our friends at Shudder and IFC, and they're so supportive. And you, the fans, and the audience has been, so incredibly enthusiastic. I'm very nervous. He wants this to go perfectly, and I think I've already screwed it up. But yeah, when we set out to make it a Violent Nature, there was always this idea of combining the aesthetics of like a Gus Van Sant movie and other art house slow cinema films with a Sean Cunningham movie. And we'd love to continue doing that. The one thing I'll say at this point, the original team is all involved. Chris Nash is involved. He's writing the script right now. But we definitely don't want to repeat ourselves entirely. We are going to stay in the realm of slow cinema and genre films. But I just want to throw it out there, like, I would love to see us riff on like Chantal Ackerman slasher movie or Andrei Tarkovsky slasher movie, like take other famous art house films and combine them with the elements of slasher films, not to condescend to the genre, but champion the genre. So is that good? Yeah.
I think we gotta move on to the next audience question, otherwise Johnny will not leave the stage. You wanna go ahead?
Sure.
If you dare.
This is awesome. I know as horror fans, a lot of times we have like a high threshold because we just consume horror in mass quantities, but is there a horror film that was either so scary or so disturbing that you have no desire to watch it again? And if you don't have one, what's something that you should?
I can't wait.
Go.
So the other night I go to see Long Legs and I see the trailer that they're doing a remake, an English language remake of Speak No Evil. When I saw Speak No Evil, it's one of the films that I wish I just hadn't watched.
Yes.
Something about that film had an effect on me that wasn't, and that's a hard thing for me to say because I've seen everything. I've watched everything, and I watched and rewatched Cannibal Holocaust, I don't know how many times in high school and college. There was something about that film that I don't want to revisit it because I don't want to know what it was, but I've tried to scrub it, and as soon as that trailer and the plot points started coming together, I was like, are you? No! No! So that's where I'm at on that one. Anyone else? I guess it's bad to talk. I'm not talking shit. I'm just saying literally.
No, that
It was a really
maybe it's sick in my stomach. Like I felt my stomach hurt. I don't know. It's
But it changes over time, I find, because I remember, like, as a kid, I watched Peter Jackson's Brain Dead over and over again, and then I remember watching it one time recently. Now, granted, it was part of a marathon, and I maybe had too much Dr. Pepper in my stomach, but I just was like, I can't watch this. This is too disgusting. This is so gross. Like, I just was getting like a visceral reaction to it at times.
Well, it's funny you say that.
Okay.
Because so you all have your substance flash drives now?
Meeting.
You guys want to see a little substance that no one's seen yet? Two things. I want to remind you to please not put your phones out. and I want to give you a trigger. Yeah, put your phones away.